Last time we dove deep on the enclosure of the tabernacle, and this week we're going to continue with the court of the tabernacle and the altar of burnt offering. As the fine linen hangings provided us with a glimpse of Christ and the righteousness of his saints that come from God, so too does the court. The progression from outside the tabernacle into the court, through the court into the holy place, and on into the Holy of Holies provides us a vivid and tangible description of our journey from being outsiders and the steps we must go through in order to approach God. The tabernacle was God's dwelling place. It was there that he would dwell among Israel, and there that he would meet with them. The Ark of the Covenant, which contained the mercy seat on top, represented God's presence in the empty space above, was located here in the Holy of Holies. In order for one to get to God, then, they would have to go from outside the tabernacle and enter through the only gate. That gate was always facing east. The east has a very special redemptive historical meaning in the Bible. The Garden of Eden, where Adam conversed with God, was in the east. Matthew chapter 1 describes Jesus as the light coming into the world. This is exemplified every morning when the sun rises in the east. And Jesus described the coming of the Son of Man in this way in Matthew 24:27. For just as the lightning comes from the east and flashes even to the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be. The eastern entry to the tabernacle is the only way to enter the tabernacle and is surrounded by linen hangings. This too is a foreshadow of Jesus, the only way to God the Father. John 10:9 states, I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. And John 14:6, Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. After entering the gate, the first sight to greet anyone would be the bronze altar of burnt offering. Inside the court, sins are resolved and reconciliation with God is reached. The court was where animals waited to be sacrificed as an offering for the forgiveness of man's sins. The location of the altar informs us that the problem of sin must be resolved before meeting God. Sin separates us from God because God is holy and has no relationship with anything unholy. Isaiah 59:2-3 states, But your iniquities have made a separation between you and your God, and your sins have hidden his face from you so that he does not hear. For your hands are defiled with blood, and your fingers with iniquity. Your lips have spoken falsehood, and your tongue mutters wickedness. An interesting characteristic of the altar is that it is square, 5 cubits by 5 cubits. Seeing as the rest of the tabernacle and the tent were rectangular, the altar being square draws attention to it. The same on all sides, the square nature of the altar reveals the justice of God. When Christ came and died once for all, justice was applied to all men at once. Additionally, there were no moldings or significant decorations on the altar. Though the Ark of the Covenant, the altar of incense, and the table of bread of the presence all contained splendid moldings, there were none present around the altar of burnt offering to beautify this holy object, foreshadowing the fact that Jesus Christ would not be glorified in his death, but would only face suffering in his life on earth. Through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, forgiveness was achieved for all mankind. 3 times in Leviticus 6, God told Moses that the fire was to burn continually. Leviticus 6:9, Command Aaron and his sons, saying, This is a law for the burnt offering. The burnt offering itself shall remain on the hearth on the altar all night until the morning, and the fire on the altar is to be kept burning on it. Leviticus 6:12, The fire on the altar shall be kept burning on it. It shall not go out, but the priest shall burn wood on it every morning. Leviticus 6:13, Fire shall be kept burning continually on the altar. It is not to go out. This indicates that the way of atonement is always open for sinners, and that the work of atonement would not be discontinued until the eternal atonement was fulfilled through Jesus Christ. Hebrews 9:11 and 12 state, But when Jesus appeared as a high priest of the good things to come, he entered through the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this creation, and not through the blood of goats and calves, but through his own blood. He entered the holy place once for all, having obtained eternal redemption. We also, however, are to give continual sacrifices to God. As Christians, the fire of our altar must never go out. we must always bring sacrifices before God. Hebrews 13:15 states, "Through him, then, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God. That is the fruit of lips that give thanks to his name." Praising is easy when everything in your life is going great. Is it a sacrifice then? It's simple to give praise to God when everything in your life is going well. But what about when it's not? When you don't know how you're going to make your next mortgage payment, or your spouse is extraordinarily ill and you're trying to understand how you're going to explain the situation to your children. Can you praise then? Psalm 107 verse 22 states, "Let them also offer sacrifices of thanksgiving and tell of his works with joyful singing." Romans 12:1 and 2 state, "Therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect." We see then that the sacrifice of Christ, as with the entrance, is only the beginning of this journey to God. Through his sacrifice, he makes it possible for us to begin this approach. But sacrifices are still demanded of us. We must lay ourselves down on the altar before God and be transformed and renewed of mind. Romans 6:6, "Knowing this, that your old self was crucified with him in order that your body of sin might be done away with, so that we would no longer be slaves to sin." And Galatians 2:20, "I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself up for me." The journey isn't an easy one. There is a reason that Jesus said, "Wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." I am overjoyed to be a part of this journey with you. Together, maybe we can see the payoff and stand righteous in the presence of our Father. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. God bless.